The last thing my husband David asked of me before he died was simple but firm. Please don't ever go to the retreat property, Naomi. Promise me. He squeezed my hand with the little strength he had left, his eyes full of fear and urgency. I promised him. I always honored his wishes, even when my curiosity grew stronger with time. But years after his death, curiosity finally overcame me, and what I discovered on that property changed my life forever. Now I finally understand why David was so desperate to keep me away. 17 years of marriage ended suddenly in a hospital room after a massive stroke no one saw coming. At 58, I became a widow with a daughter still in college and a hollow loneliness that never seemed to fade. As I sorted through David's affairs, I began to realize how much of his life I had never truly known. 2 months after the funeral, on an ordinary Tuesday, his attorney, Mr. Harrison, asked me to come to his office. The world had moved on, but I was still learning how to exist without David. Mrs. Sterling, there's something I need to give you, Mr. Harrison said, sliding a small box and an envelope across his polished desk. Your husband instructed that this be delivered only after his death. Inside the box was a heavy antique key attached to a leaf-shaped metal keychain. The envelope had my name written in David's unmistakable handwriting. What is this key for? I asked, turning it slowly in my fingers. It opens a property in Lake Arrowhead, Mr. Harrison explained. Your husband purchased it about 4 years ago. He left strict instructions that you were not to know about it until after he passed. My heart began to race. David never owned any property besides our home. He never mentioned a retreat, and more confusing still, he had made me promise never to go there. Why hide it, only to reveal it later? It's called the Crestwood Estate, the attorney continued. It was part of your husband's childhood. He managed to buy it back after many years, though it had changed owners several times. That doesn't make sense, I said quickly. David avoided talking about his childhood. Whenever Lake Arrowhead came up, he would tense up and change the subject. Why would he buy a house there? Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. I can't answer that, ma'am. But there's something else you should know. The property has become extremely valuable over the past 2 years. How? A major developer, Summit Resorts, is building a luxury resort nearby. Your husband's land is in a key location. They've already made several offers worth millions. My mind reeled. David was never rich. We lived comfortably, he as an engineer, me as a university professor, but not at a level that allowed for secret property purchases in a high-end area. Why had he kept this from me? With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. My dearest Naomi. If you're reading this, it means I left sooner than I expected. Forgive me for the secrets I kept. The house is yours now. Over the past 4 years, I turned that dark place from my childhood into something I hope you'll find beautiful. I know I made you promise never to go there, but I release you from that promise now. I ask only that you visit once before deciding what to do with it. In the study, you'll find my laptop. The password is the date we first met, followed by hope, the word you taught me to feel again. I love you more than words can say. David. I pressed the letter to my chest as tears blurred my vision. Even after death, David still knew how to shock me. I need to see this place, I said. There is one issue, Mr. Harrison warned. David's family is contesting the will. His brother, Marcus Sterling, claims David wasn't mentally competent when he purchased the property. That's ridiculous, I said firmly. My husband was clear-minded and steady until the very end. They've filed legal motions regardless. Given the value of the estate, this could become a long legal fight. I slipped the key into my pocket, resolve flooding through me. I'm going to Lake Arrowhead today. 2 days later, after a rushed drive through the Cascade Range, I stopped in front of a carved wooden gate bearing the name Crestwood Estate in wrought iron. My heart pounded as I turned the key. The gate opened quietly, revealing a property far grander than I had imagined. This wasn't a simple retreat. It was a sprawling stone and wood mansion surrounded by perfectly kept gardens and towering old oak trees. A stone path led through immaculate lawns to the main entrance. Everything looked new, carefully restored. Nothing about the place reflected the painful childhood David never wanted to discuss. This house had been rebuilt with care and love. David's presence was everywhere, in every detail I had never known existed. My hand shook as I unlocked the front door. It opened with a soft click, and I stepped into the hidden world of the man I had loved for nearly 20 years. What I saw inside made me grab the doorframe to keep myself from collapsing. The entrance opened into a massive, double-height living room with a grand stone fireplace. But it wasn't the architecture that took my breath away. It was the paintings that stole my breath. Every wall, every open space, was covered with artwork, orchids in every imaginable color and variety. My lifelong passion. The love David always encouraged quietly, never intruding, always supporting. I was standing inside a gallery built around the thing I loved most. Near a window overlooking the garden sat a silver laptop. Resting gently on its lid was a single white orchid. Before I could move closer, the crunch of tires on gravel shattered the silence. I turned toward the window just in time to see a black SUV pull in behind my car. 3 men stepped out. They all looked like David. The same straight nose. The same almond-shaped eyes. Different ages, same blood. The Sterling brothers had arrived, and the cold expressions on their faces told me they weren't here to welcome a grieving widow. They walked toward the house with the confidence of men who already believed it belonged to them. My pulse raced as I quietly closed the front door and moved to the side window. On the porch, they stopped, whispering among themselves. Then the eldest, older, grayer, but unmistakably David's brother, pounded on the door. "Mrs. Naomi, we know you're in there. We need to talk." His voice carried the same sharp tension David used to get when he was anxious. I didn't respond. David's warnings about his family had always been firm. Standing there now, my instinct screamed for caution. The knocking came again, harder. "Naomi, I'm Marcus Sterling, David's older brother. These are Elijah and Isaiah. We're here about the property." Of course they were. Not for David. Not for the woman he loved for 17 years. They were here for a house suddenly worth millions. My eyes drifted back to the laptop. Whatever answers I needed wouldn't come from men pounding on my door. Ignoring the increasingly aggressive knocks, I crossed the room and typed in the password. October 12, 96 Hope. The screen lit up instantly. A folder opened, named Naomi. Inside were hundreds of video files, neatly dated. The first was recorded the day after David's funeral. The last was dated a full year later. My hand shook as I clicked the first video. David's face filled the screen, not the pale, fragile version from the hospital, but healthy, warm, unmistakably alive. "Hello, my love," he said, smiling that crooked smile that always undid me. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone, and you came to Crestwood, despite years of me begging you not to." A lump formed in my throat. I should have known you wouldn't be able to resist, especially after Harrison told you about the house. Even now, he knew me perfectly. "I recorded one video for every day of your first year without me," he continued gently. "A year of company while you grieve. A year of explanations for everything I should have told you while I was alive." He paused, lowering his eyes briefly before looking back with quiet resolve. "Let's start with why I bought back the house I swore I'd never step foot in again." Outside, the knocking had stopped. Through the window, I saw the brothers back by their SUV, pulling out papers and talking sharply among themselves. 3 years ago, David said, I was diagnosed with a cerebral aneurysm. A genetic time bomb inherited from my father. The doctors gave me 2 to 5 years. My breath caught. I chose not to tell you or Chloe. I didn't want pity. And I didn't want our final years together lived under the shadow of death. His voice softened. I wanted to live fully with you, not slowly die in front of you. Shock and anger surged through me. He had hidden something so huge. Made decisions without me. Stolen my chance to prepare, to be fully present in our last moments. I know you're angry, he said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. You have every right to be. But I hope one day you understand, I did it out of love, not fear. Outside, the brothers paced the driveway, making phone calls, frustration written across their faces. When I got the diagnosis, David continued, I decided to use the time I had left to create something meaningful for you. You always loved orchids. You always dreamed of having a space just for yourself. He leaned closer to the camera. So I went to the last place anyone would expect me to return, the house I left at 18, swearing never to come back. What my brothers don't know, he added, is that I legally bought the house from my father before he died. He was broke, years of gambling and drinking ruined him. He sold it to me for almost nothing and made me promise not to tell my brothers, who still believed they'd inherit it. Everything clicked into place. The house was in ruins when I bought it, David said. Just like my childhood there. But this time I had the means to change it. Every business trip over the last 4 years, I was here. Renovating. Building something for you. Outside, the brothers were approaching the door again. Marcus pressed a document against the window, a court order. My brothers will come for the house, David said, his voice turning firm. They didn't care about it until the resort project began. Now the place they mocked me for buying is suddenly worth millions. They'll try anything to take it from you. One of them ended a phone call with a smug smile. In the bottom drawer of the table, David continued, you'll find a blue folder. It contains everything you need. The house is legally yours. I made sure of that. His expression softened again. But Naomi, whether you keep it or sell it, that's your choice. I built this place for you. I filled it with beauty for you. I don't want it to become a burden. A police cruiser rolled up the driveway. The brothers watched it approach with satisfied looks. One last thing, David said. Behind the house, in the conservatory, you'll find my rare orchid collection. I spent years cultivating it. The staff will continue caring for them. They're my final gift to you, along with the freedom to enjoy them however you choose. The video ended, freezing on David's smiling face. A sharper knock followed. Mrs. Sterling, a voice called. County officer. Please open the door. I closed the laptop, retrieved the blue folder from the drawer, and took a steady breath. As I reached for the doorknob, my phone rang. Chloe. Mom, why didn't you tell me about Dad's house? She demanded, her voice tight. The uncles just called me. They're offering a fair deal if I help them contest the will. What is going on? Anger flared, hot and protective. They weren't just after me. They were targeting my grieving daughter. I'll explain everything later, I said firmly. But Chloe, don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Those men are not our friends. Mom, if there's money. This isn't about money, I cut in, surprising even myself. It's about what your father wanted. Please trust me. After a pause, she sighed. Okay. Call me as soon as you can. I hung up and opened the door. A young officer stood there. Mrs. Sterling, I'm Officer Davis. These gentlemen have a court order requesting an inspection of the property as part of an inheritance dispute. The 3 Sterlings flanked him, their expressions ranging from smug to openly hostile. I smiled calmly, drawing on the strength David always believed I had. Of course, officer, I said, handing him the blue folder. But before anyone enters, I think you should review these documents. Marcus stepped forward with a dismissive wave. Family disputes are complicated, officer. My sister-in-law is emotional and confused. Actually, I said evenly, I'm neither emotional nor confused. I'm a widow standing on property that legally belongs to me, facing 3 strangers who happen to share my husband's DNA. I turned back to the officer. And I'd appreciate it if you read those papers carefully before allowing anyone onto my property. The deputy accepted the folder, his face carefully neutral as he reviewed the documents. The Sterling brothers exchanged uneasy looks, their confidence fading by the second. I thought of David's videos, of the illness he hid to protect Chloe and me, of the extraordinary gift he had created with the time he had left. Whatever scheme his brothers were trying to play, I wasn't going to surrender the final, physical proof of my husband's love without a fight. The deputy finally looked up. "These documents appear to be valid, ma'am," he said. "There's a clear deed transfer, notarized statements, and certified records of the original purchase." He turned to the brothers. "Gentlemen, I don't see any legal grounds to force an inspection today. This is a civil matter." Marcus's face reddened. "This is ridiculous. That woman has no right." "That woman," I interrupted calmly, "is David Sterling's wife. And I have every right to be here." The brothers retreated toward their SUV, anger simmering beneath forced restraint. The deputy followed, offering me a brief, apologetic nod. As they drove away, I felt an odd mix of grief and discovery. The man I thought I knew completely had carried secrets, some painful, others breathtakingly beautiful. Now I faced a choice: retreat to the familiar safety of my old life, or step fully into this unexpected legacy and the battle that came with it. I closed the door, returned to the table, and opened the laptop again. Tomorrow's video was waiting. With it came more pieces of the man I loved, and was only now beginning to understand. Outside, the Sterling brothers might have lost this round, but the looks on their faces as they drove off made one thing clear. The war for the Crestwood estate had only just begun. That night, I stayed in David's house, or rather, our house, surrounded by the quiet evidence of his secret labor of love. Sleep never came. My mind raced with everything I had learned: the fatal diagnosis he concealed, the transformed home, his brother's sudden greed, and the hundreds of videos still waiting for me. At dawn, I finally explored the property properly. The main house was a masterpiece, blending its original rustic charm with modern comfort. Every room reflected thoughtful attention to my tastes. The library held first editions of my favorite authors. A reading nook overlooked the garden, perfectly positioned for cool autumn mornings. But nothing compared to the conservatory. As David promised, it was filled with orchids, rare, exquisite, breathtaking. Some I had only ever seen in specialized books. A blue Lilia walkeriana, nearly impossible to find, bloomed proudly at the center like a queen. "Good morning, ma'am." The voice startled me. A middle-aged woman stepped out from between the plants, holding a sprayer. "I'm Miss Jackson," she said. "Your husband hired me to care for the orchids." "Naomi Sterling," I replied, shaking her hand. "Though I suspect you already knew that." She smiled warmly. "Mr. David talked about you often. He said you had a special touch with plants, one he never quite managed himself." "Did you know him well?" I asked. She hesitated. "As well as he allowed anyone to know him. He was here at least once a month for 4 years, overseeing everything personally." That was David, methodical, hands-on, unwilling to leave anything important to chance. "That blue cattleya," she continued, pointing to the orchid I'd been admiring. "He spent almost 2 years searching for it. Said it reminded him of one you once saw at a show and never forgot." My heart ached. The Atlanta Botanical Garden exhibition, 10 years earlier. I'd mentioned that flower only once. And he remembered. Did he ever mention his health? I asked quietly. A shadow crossed her face. Not directly. But in the last 6 months, he worked like a man racing a clock. The truth settled heavily in my chest. I had sensed the urgency back then and blamed it on work, never realizing he was building all of this while knowing his time was running out. "His brothers were here yesterday," I said carefully. Her expression hardened. "They've been circling ever since Summit Resorts announced their project. Suddenly very interested in a house they ignored for decades." She adjusted the irrigation system and continued. "Marcus is the eldest, runs an investment firm in Raleigh. Always treated David like an afterthought. Elijah's the lawyer, smooth with words. Isaiah follows Marcus like a shadow." She shook her head. They mocked David for buying this place, until it became valuable. It matched everything David had ever hinted at: a harsh childhood, escape through college, and a family he never wanted to revisit. "They'll be back," I murmured. "Yes," she agreed. But Mr. David prepared for that. He always thought several steps ahead. Back inside, I forced myself to eat before opening the next video. David appeared, seated in the library. "Good morning, my love," he said softly. "I hope you slept well in our new home." That crooked smile pierced straight through me. "Today, I want to show you something special." The camera moved as he walked down a hallway I hadn't explored, stopping at a locked door. "This room is just for you. The key is in the top drawer of the nightstand, the antique silver one with the orchid engraving." I paused the video, found the key exactly where he said, and followed his path to a discreet door at the end of the east wing. The lock turned smoothly. When I opened the door, I gasped. A fully equipped art studio filled the sunlit corner room. Easels, canvases, paints, brushes, everything an artist could dream of, arranged with loving care. I hadn't painted in 15 years. After art school, I gave it up to teach literature, to support David's career, to raise Chloe. Over time, someday faded into a quiet regret. The video resumed, David's voice steady and tender. "You gave up so much for us, Naomi. Painting was the first sacrifice. You never complained, but I never forgot." Tears blurred my vision as I took in the room, the perfect light, the shelves of reference books. "There's one more thing," he said. "Look in the cabinet beneath the window bench." I crossed the room, knelt, and opened a hidden cabinet. Inside was an archival box. When I lifted the lid, my knees gave out. My paintings. Dozens of them. Every piece from college, works I thought had been lost forever. David had preserved them for 15 years, waiting to return them to me here. On top lay my final project, a self-portrait of a young woman staring toward the future, eyes bright with possibility. David had asked to keep it the day I finished it. Attached was a handwritten note. "She's still in there, Naomi, the woman who painted with hope and fire. I gave you the space. The rest is up to you." I pressed the note to my chest, overwhelmed by love and grief intertwined. David had truly seen me, even when I had forgotten myself. The sound of engines on gravel shattered the moment. From the window, I saw 2 SUVs approaching. The familiar black one belonged to the Sterling brothers. Behind it was a silver vehicle I recognized instantly. Chloe. She stepped out confidently and walked toward her uncles, smiling, shaking hands with men she had never met. Whatever fragile peace I'd found dissolved instantly. The fight for Crestwood had become personal. My phone buzzed. "I'm here with Uncle Marcus and the others. Coming in now. We need to talk." "Uncle Marcus." I tucked David's note into my pocket, closed the studio door, and went downstairs. They entered without knocking, Chloe first, comfortable and trusting, the brothers behind her like predators following an unwitting guide. "Mom," Chloe said, hugging me briefly before pulling back, her eyes scanning the room. "This place is incredible. Why did Dad never tell us about this?" Chloe asked. Before I could respond, Marcus stepped forward. The resemblance to David was almost painful. "Naomi, I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday," he said smoothly. "Your arrival surprised us, just as ours surprised you." His conciliatory tone didn't match the calculating look in his eyes. Beside him, Elijah and Isaiah stood carefully neutral, though Elijah held a leather folder that almost certainly contained legal papers. "Chloe," I said, deliberately ignoring Marcus, "we agreed you wouldn't engage with your father's brothers until we talked." She flushed slightly. "They called again this morning with a really reasonable proposal. I thought I should at least hear them out." Her chin lifted. "Besides, they're my family too." "Family you didn't even know existed until yesterday," I said gently. "Only because Dad kept them away from us," she shot back. "Just like he hid this place." "Doesn't that strike you as strange?" she continued. What else was he hiding? The question cut dangerously close to what I'd learned from David's videos. Your father had complicated relationships with his brothers, I said carefully. He had reasons for the distance he kept. Marcus waved a dismissive hand. Ancient history. Brothers fight, especially in difficult families like ours. What matters is moving forward together. Exactly, Chloe said, nodding earnestly. Uncle Marcus explained everything. This house has been in the Sterling family for generations. Dad bought it from Grandpa, but it was always meant to be shared eventually. I resisted the urge to sigh. In less than a day, she was already repeating their version of events. And this sudden interest has nothing to do with the luxury resort being built next door? I asked quietly. Elijah stepped forward and opened his folder. The real estate development is only one piece of a complex legal situation. We've prepared a fair settlement, one that honors David's wishes while recognizing the family's historical claim. We're being very generous, Marcus added, placing a paternal hand on Chloe's shoulder. 1/3 to you, Naomi. 1/3 to Chloe. And 1/3 divided among us brothers. Everyone wins. Chloe looked at me expectantly. It makes sense, Mom. We don't need this massive place. We could sell it, walk away with millions, and keep Dad's family united. Your father left this property to me, I said evenly, meeting Marcus's gaze. Not to you. Not to his brothers. Out of confusion and sentimentality, Marcus replied smoothly. David wasn't thinking clearly in his final years. Anger flashed through me. My husband was lucid until the day he died. Then why all the secrecy? Isaiah asked quietly, speaking for the first time. Why hide the purchase from his wife and daughter? Why involve attorneys and elaborate arrangements? Those aren't the actions of a rational man. I thought of the videos. The renovations. The art studio. Every detail deliberate and precise. Mom, Chloe said softly, I know this is hard. But this deal makes sense financially. We'd both be secure for life. The door opened behind them, and Ms. Jackson appeared, concern etched across her face. Mrs. Sterling, is everything all right? I saw the cars arrive. The brothers turned, irritated. This is a family matter, Marcus said coldly. Ms. Jackson is my employee, I replied firmly. She's welcome in my home. Actually, Elijah interjected, her employment is one of the disputed assets pending resolution of our claim. Ms. Jackson stood her ground. Mr. David hired me personally. He made me promise to look after the property, and Mrs. Naomi, if anything happened. We'll review all contracts later, Marcus said dismissively. I'd heard enough. I think it's time for all of you to leave. I looked at the brothers, then softened as I turned to Chloe. Except you. You're always welcome to stay. You're not even going to consider their offer? Chloe asked, stunned. I'll review any written proposal with my own attorney, I said calmly. But I won't be pressured in my own home. Marcus's mask slipped, revealing the ruthless businessman beneath. This property will be worth tens of millions once the resort is completed. We can handle this amicably, or make it very difficult. Is that a threat? I asked, my voice steady. A reality check, he replied. You're a university professor facing opponents with far greater resources. David may have meant well, but he left you in an impossible position. I thought of the blue folder, the videos, the careful planning behind every decision. I believe my husband knew exactly what he was doing, I said. Now please leave. Turning to Chloe, I added, you're welcome to stay for lunch. She hesitated, torn between me and her newly discovered uncles. I think I'll go with them, for now, she said quietly. We still have things to discuss. She kissed my cheek. Please think about the offer, Mom. I watched them drive away, a hollow ache settling in my chest. In less than 24 hours, my daughter had been pulled into the orbit of men David had avoided his entire life. Ms. Jackson waited until the cars disappeared before speaking. Mrs. Sterling, there's something you need to know, something your husband asked me not to reveal unless it became absolutely necessary. I turned to her, exhausted but alert. What is it? It's about the true extent of this property, and what's really hidden here. She glanced toward the conservatory. We should walk. Some things shouldn't be discussed inside the house. As we crossed the lawn, sunlight spilled over the beautiful estate David had built in secret. Whatever was coming, I knew one thing: David had anticipated this fight, perhaps even Chloe's vulnerability to his brother's manipulation. The question was whether he had prepared me well enough to win. Ms. Jackson led me past the conservatory to a small tool shed I hadn't explored. Unlike the rest of the property, it looked untouched, intentionally plain. Your husband was a careful man, she said, pulling out an old iron key. After his brother's first visit last year, he became even more cautious. They visited before? I asked. She nodded gravely. As soon as they heard about the resort project. David was here supervising the art studio. They didn't recognize him, he'd grown a beard during treatment. The casual mention of his treatment struck me like a fresh wave of grief. While I taught classes, unaware, David had been here, sick, building this sanctuary, fending off his brothers. What happened? I asked. He watched them from a distance and left without revealing himself. That night, he changed the property plans, starting with this. She unlocked the shed. Inside was nothing remarkable: tools, equipment, dust floating in thin beams of light. Ms. Jackson moved to the back corner, pushed aside several boxes, and revealed a trapdoor set into the concrete floor. Your husband installed this last winter. The workers thought they were building a wine cellar. She lifted the heavy door, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. After you. Curiosity overpowered fear as I climbed down. At the bottom, she flipped a switch. Light snapped on, revealing a long concrete tunnel. What is this place? I whispered. Your husband called it the vault, she said. I call it genius. The tunnel opened into a large room filled with filing cabinets, computer equipment, and walls covered in maps and documents. Welcome to David's war room. I stepped closer to a massive map showing the estate and the surrounding area for miles. Red markings detailed the resort development, construction phases, projected values, handwritten notes everywhere. I don't understand, I said. At first, David didn't know, Ms. Jackson explained. He bought the property for you, nothing more. But 2 years ago, when Summit Resorts began preliminary studies, he hired a consultant. She pointed to the map. They discovered something the developer planned to keep secret until every surrounding property was secured. The full resort project was nearly 3 times larger than what had been publicly announced. I leaned closer to the map, noticing how the markings stretched far beyond the areas shown in the news. Phase 2 includes a golf course, Ms. Jackson explained. To build it, they need part of the land surrounding this estate. They've already bought almost everything else, I said slowly, understanding now. Except Crestwood. She nodded. Your husband confirmed it with 3 independent experts. This property sits at the center of the expansion. Without it, the entire project loses nearly half its projected value. I exhaled sharply. So the land is worth far more than his brothers realize. Exponentially more, she confirmed. But that isn't all. Ms. Jackson opened a file cabinet and removed a thick folder. Inside were decades of records documenting the brothers' questionable business dealings, tax evasion, insider trading, misuse of client funds. Enough evidence to destroy their careers if exposed. I flipped through the papers, stunned by David's thoroughness. Emails, bank records, sworn statements from former employees. It was airtight. Why would he collect all this? I asked. Ms. Jackson sat across from me. Because he knew they'd come for the house once he was gone. He wanted you to be protected. Images of Marcus's smug smile and Elijah's legal pressure flashed through my mind. David had anticipated everything. Not quite everything, she said gently. He didn't expect them to reach your daughter so quickly. The memory stung. Chloe was grieving, vulnerable, and desperate for a connection to her father. They're manipulating her, I said quietly. Yes, Ms. Jackson agreed. She lost her father, and suddenly these men offer her history, blood, belonging. That's powerful. She was right. Chloe had always been close to David. His absence left a gap they quickly filled. What do I do now? I asked. That depends on what you want, Ms. Jackson replied. You could sell everything and walk away wealthy, but possibly lose your daughter. Or fight them legally and win, but deepen the family wounds. Or? I prompted. Or do what David always did, she said. Think 3 steps ahead. Choose the path no one sees coming. As I studied the room again, I noticed a framed photograph on the table. A teenage David stood proudly beside a blooming orchid, smiling with an innocence I rarely saw in him. That was his first Catalia, Ms. Jackson said softly. The only good thing from his childhood here. His brothers destroyed it while he was away at school, just to hurt him. Everything clicked. The conservatory, the studio, his encouragement of my love for art and flowers, it wasn't just generosity. It was reclamation. I picked up the photo, a plan forming in my mind. Does the laptop with David's videos work down here? I asked. Yes, she said. There's a secure network throughout the property. Good. I need to watch more of them. Then schedule meetings, for me and my daughter alone, my attorney, and finally, I glanced at the wall of evidence. The executives at Summit Resorts. Ms. Jackson smiled for the first time. Your husband would approve. I'm doing something worthy of him, I said firmly. And I'll need your help. You have it, she replied. He gave me a second chance when no one else would. As we sealed the bunker again, I felt something shift. Not grief, but partnership. David hadn't just left me property. He left me preparation. The brothers thought they were dealing with a helpless widow. They had no idea. Over the next 48 hours, I barely slept. I watched a week's worth of David's recordings in a single night. Each one revealed more foresight. They will divide and conquer, he warned. Marcus will charm. Elijah will threaten legally. Isaiah will observe. And they will target Chloe. In another video, he revealed confidential documents about Summit Resorts. If the developers learned we knew about Phase 2 before buying the land, the value tripled. Armed with the truth, I met Chloe at a city coffee shop, neutral ground. She arrived late, already defensive. I can't stay long. Uncle Marcus is taking me to meet investors. You've grown close quickly, I said gently. They've been welcoming, she snapped. Unlike you. You treat Dad's family like enemies. I reminded her of a narrative theory class she loved, how truth depends on perspective. You've only heard their version, I said. There's another one. Your father's. She bristled. Dad's dead. And he didn't trust us enough to tell us the truth. I pulled out a tablet. He left something for you. I played the video. David appeared, smiling, alive. My brilliant girl, he began. If you're watching this, I'm gone. And you're probably angry. Tears filled her eyes as he explained why he hid his illness, a cerebral aneurysm diagnosed 3 years earlier. He wanted their time to feel normal. Then his tone hardened. My brothers defrauded me when I was 19. They used my name, forged documents, and threatened me into silence. Chloe covered her mouth. They want control of the property, David said. Not sentiment. Greed. And they will use anyone, even you. The video ended. He was protecting us, she whispered. Yes, I said. And they're lying to you. Anger replaced grief in her eyes. They're trying to con us. Us? I repeated. She nodded. I never left your side. I just wanted to feel close to Dad. I squeezed her hand. Now we do this together. What's the plan? She asked. I smiled. Tonight, we meet my attorney. Tomorrow, Summit Resorts. Why them? Because knowledge is power, and we know exactly what this land is worth. She laughed for the first time since David died. Dad always said you were the smartest person he knew. As we walked out together, I knew the brothers had failed. Instead of dividing us, they had united us. And they had no idea what was coming next. Later that night, with Chloe beside me, I laid out my full plan for the attorney David had recommended for this exact situation. As he listened, his expression shifted from professional curiosity to open admiration. When I finished, he leaned back slowly. Mrs. Sterling, he said, your husband told me you would surprise me. He was absolutely right. He was right about many things, I replied. Including believing I was capable not only of surviving his death, but of becoming stronger because of it. 3 days later, right on schedule at 10 sharp, the Sterling brothers arrived at Crestwood. Their black SUV rolled confidently up the driveway, followed by a silver sedan I didn't recognize, most likely an attorney or financial advisor. I watched from the study window, dressed not in the casual clothes they had seen before, but in a tailored suit chosen specifically for this meeting. Appearances mattered. I intended to be seen not as a grieving widow, but as the opponent David always knew I could be. They're here, I said. Chloe emerged from the library, equally composed in a navy dress, her father's watch, one of his most treasured possessions, visible on her wrist. Ready? She asked, nervous but determined. Completely, I said, squeezing her hand. Let them corner themselves first. Miss Jackson appeared. They've entered through the back, just as you requested. They're waiting in the dining room. Perfect, I said. The doorbell rang moments later. Miss Jackson answered with calm professionalism. Good morning, gentlemen. Mrs. Naomi and Chloe are waiting. They entered like men used to being in control. Marcus led the way, Elijah followed with his familiar legal folder, and Isaiah trailed behind. With them was a gray-haired man in an expensive suit who carried himself like someone accustomed to authority. Naomi, Marcus said smoothly. Thank you for meeting with us. This is Mr. Chen, CFO of Sterling Investments. We felt his expertise would be helpful. So they had brought backup. Predictable. How thoughtful, I replied pleasantly. Please, follow me. I led them into the formal dining room, where the table had been arranged with documents, coffee, and water at each seat. Everything was deliberate. Please sit, I said. We have a great deal to discuss. As they settled in, still confident, I remained standing. Before we begin, I said, I want to thank you for your proposal. It was educational. Marcus smiled, clearly mistaking my tone for surrender. We're glad you're open to discussion, he said. With Mr. Chen's input, we can finalize a fair division. Yes, I said, picking up a remote. Division is exactly what I'd like to talk about. I pressed a button. A hidden screen descended from the ceiling. The brothers exchanged surprised looks. A detailed map of Crestwood appeared. This is the complete survey of the estate, I explained. All 25 acres. Not just the 10 mentioned in your proposal. Elijah shifted. The western portion is protected land. We excluded it for simplicity. How generous, I said. Except for one problem. Another click revealed a second overlay, Summit Resorts' full expansion plan, including the undisclosed golf course. Mr. Chen leaned forward sharply, his composure slipping. As you can see, I continued calmly, Phase 2 of the resort relies heavily on the western portion of this property, the land you conveniently removed from consideration. Marcus flushed. Those plans are speculation. Actually, a new voice interrupted, they are fully approved. The side door opened, and the CEO of Summit Resorts entered, followed by my attorney and 2 executives. What is this? Marcus demanded. This, I said pleasantly, is a discussion about the true value of Crestwood. My attorney placed documents on the table. Mrs. Sterling holds sole legal ownership. The brothers have no negotiating authority. Mr. Chen looked stunned. I was told otherwise. You were misled, my attorney replied. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. This land belongs to the Sterling family. Chloe spoke then, her voice steady. Like how you felt morally obligated when you defrauded my father's inheritance? Or forged his signature? Or threatened him when he tried to expose you? The room froze. What is she talking about? Mr. Chen asked. I nodded to my attorney, who distributed sealed envelopes. These contain documentation my husband preserved, I said. Some matters may be time-barred. Others would be of great interest to tax authorities. Elijah opened his envelope and went pale. These are private family issues, he stammered. No, I said, finally sitting. They establish a pattern of fraud, one that directly affects your credibility and your attempt to deceive Mr. Chen. Silence settled as the brothers realized how completely exposed they were. What do you want? Marcus asked quietly. I want you gone, I said. You will leave this property and never return. You will stop harassing me and my daughter. In exchange, these documents remain private. Mr. Chen stood abruptly. My involvement was based on false information. He turned to me. Mrs. Sterling, I'll contact you directly going forward. He left without another glance at the brothers. Marcus glared. You have no idea what this land will cost to develop. Actually, the Summit CEO said, we're prepared to make an offer that reflects both the challenges and the extraordinary potential. As negotiations continued, I met Chloe's eyes across the table. Her faint smile said everything. 2 hours later, the Sterling brothers left, defeated, bound by agreements they hadn't anticipated. As their cars disappeared down the driveway, Miss Jackson stood beside me. Your husband would be proud, she said. I watched the dust settle. Triumph mixed with grief, strength born from loss. We're not finished yet, I said softly. This was only the first battle, but it was one David had prepared us to win. Finalizing our settlement involved weeks of careful work, meetings with Summit Resorts to structure a mutually beneficial agreement that preserved the most sensitive portions of the land, along with a detailed inventory of everything David had created at Crestwood. Throughout it all, Chloe stayed with me. Her initial resentment over her father's secrets slowly softened into appreciation for his foresight. We developed a quiet ritual. Every morning, we watched one of David's videos together. His presence, even after death, became a source of comfort and direction for both of us. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the hills, Chloe broke the silence. Did you ever suspect anything? She asked. That Dad was sick, or planning all of this? I thought carefully, searching my memories. There were small things, I said finally. His insistence on updating our legal documents 3 years ago. The way he sometimes looked at us during dinner, like he was memorizing our faces. His sudden urge to photograph ordinary moments. I thought that was just a midlife appreciation phase, Chloe said with a sad smile. In a way, it was, I replied softly. Just not for the reasons we imagined. The biggest change had been how David stopped postponing life. He had always been a someday man when it came to personal dreams. Someday we'd travel, someday he'd take up photography, someday we'd renovate the kitchen. Then suddenly, he stopped waiting. He began doing, building, creating things that would last. I never imagined he was racing against time, I admitted. Creating a legacy because he knew he wouldn't be here to see it grow. The executives at Summit Resorts were visibly surprised when I presented my terms. Instead of selling the land outright for a lump sum, I demanded strict environmental protections, firm limits on development, and ironclad guarantees that the conservatory and art studio would remain untouched. These terms are highly unusual, the chief negotiator said. Then perhaps the industry needs more unusual terms, I replied calmly. This land is special. It deserves patience and responsibility. To my surprise, the CEO, Mr. Alluston, was intrigued rather than resistant. "Your husband said you'd insist on doing this the right way," he told me. "Not just the profitable way." Once again, David had prepared the path ahead of me, even arranging relationships he knew I would need after he was gone. A month later, I stood inside the art studio he had built, sunlight pouring through the tall windows onto a waiting canvas. After more than a decade away from painting, I picked up a brush again, tentative at first, then steadier. Through the window, my subject waited patiently in the conservatory, the rare blue orchid David had found simply because he remembered a comment I'd made years earlier. Miss Jackson guided me through orchid care, my hands slowly rediscovering skills I thought I had lost forever. "Mom," Chloe said one afternoon, standing in the doorway with a laptop. "Today's video is different. I think you should watch it alone." I hesitated. "Different how?" "It's labeled for day 30, she said gently. He titled it, "When Naomi Starts Painting Again." My breath caught. She handed me the computer with a knowing smile. Alone in the studio, surrounded by rediscovered passion, I pressed play. David appeared on screen, sitting in the empty room before the supplies had been installed. "Hello, my love," he said, smiling. "If you're watching this, you've found your way back to art, to the part of yourself you set aside for our family." Tears filled my eyes as I touched the screen. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy," he continued. "Not wealth or accomplishments, but something deeper, the ability to create possibility in those we love." He gestured around the empty space. "This room isn't finished yet, but I can already see it filled with light, color, and your work. I see you here, finally bringing those long-held visions to life." I looked at the orchid painting on my easel, stunned by how closely it matched his words. "I structured everything to give you freedom," he said. "Financial security. Protection from my brothers. A place to create. What you do with that freedom, that's your legacy." He leaned closer to the camera. "The house, the conservatory, the studio, they're just tools. The real inheritance is possibility." I paused the video, overwhelmed. David had seen the artist in me long before I dared to see her myself. When I resumed the video, his voice softened. "One request," he said. "In the closet behind this room is a large blank canvas. When you're ready, I hope you'll create something for it, something that captures not just what you see, but what you feel about this place." The video ended. "Until tomorrow, my love." I found the canvas exactly where he said it would be, massive, custom-sized, perfect for the great room. Over the following weeks, as autumn wrapped the estate in gold, I sketched endlessly. Nothing felt right, until one morning, watching Chloe tend the orchids, clarity struck. The final painting was not a simple landscape. It blended past and present. The restored house stood in the background. Beneath it, translucent layers revealed the ruined property David had purchased, the childhood home he fled, and the ancient land beneath it all. In the foreground stood two figures, a woman and a young woman, suggested rather than defined. And behind them, almost hidden, a third figure held a blue orchid, offering it forward. When the painting was finally hung, Chloe studied it in silence. "It's Dad," she whispered. "And us." "Legacy," I said. "Not what's left behind, but what continues forward." That night, watching the sunset from the porch, I felt David's presence not as grief, but as partnership. He had given me freedom, purpose, and the courage to become someone new. Months later, while I was working in the studio, Miss Jackson appeared. "Mrs. Sterling," she said carefully, "Marcus Sterling is here." "Alone?" I stiffened. "Does he have legal documents?" "No." "And, he looks different. Less arrogant." After a moment, I nodded. "I'll speak with him on the porch. Don't invite him inside." And I stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. Marcus looked thinner than the last time I had seen him. The lines around his eyes were deeper, etched by something heavier than age. He turned as I opened the door, his expression unexpectedly subdued. "Naomi," he said quietly, Thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you, Marcus? I asked calmly. Our agreement was very clear. I'm not here to contest it, he replied. His gaze drifted across the property before returning to me. I'm here to apologize. Of all the things I had anticipated, an apology was near the bottom of the list. I crossed my arms, waiting. I've spent the last few months thinking about David, he continued. About our childhood. About the choices I made. He swallowed hard. I didn't expect you to win. I should have. David was always the smartest of us. That's not an apology, I said gently. You're right. He nodded. I'm sorry, for trying to take this house from you. For manipulating Chloe. For all the years I made David's life harder than it ever needed to be. I studied his face, searching for calculation or deception. I found only exhaustion, and something that might have been genuine regret. Why now? I asked. I have cancer, he said simply. Stage 4. The prognosis isn't good. He exhaled slowly. It puts things into perspective. The echo of David's illness hit me like a quiet wave. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. I didn't come for sympathy, Marcus replied. I came because my little brother built something beautiful here. And I, through greed and arrogance, almost destroyed it. He pulled a small packet from his coat pocket and held it out. I found this among our father's things. I thought you, or Chloe, might want it. I accepted it cautiously. Inside was a faded photograph, 3 boys standing beneath a massive tree. The smallest one, David, held a tiny potted orchid in his hands. The first one he ever grew, Marcus said softly. He didn't finish the thought. I looked from the photograph to the man standing before me, broken in a way power and money could never repair. Would you like to see the conservatory? I asked, surprising both of us. David cultivated some remarkable orchids. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Then he nodded once and followed me onto the property he had once tried to take. As we walked among the flowers David had nurtured with such care, I saw Marcus differently, not as a villain to defeat, but as a man haunted by choices he could never undo. Forgiveness wouldn't erase the past or change the future, but perhaps it, too, was part of the legacy David left behind, the courage to choose compassion when resentment would be easier. I'll never know whether Marcus's remorse was fully genuine or simply born of fear and regret. What I do know is that when he left, something at Crestwood subtly shifted, as if the final chapter had finally closed. That night, I watched David's very last video. He smiled at me from the screen, his eyes filled with a peace I had never noticed while he was alive. This is the end of our daily journey together, my love, he said softly. A year of messages to guide you through the months without me. But it isn't the end of us. He paused, looking directly into the camera, as if he could truly see me. We continue in the choices you make. In the love you share with Chloe. In the beauty you create from here on out. The house I once feared is now yours to transform. The secret I kept has become your gift. The promise I asked you to make, only to release you from it, has become the path to your freedom. He smiled one last time. Never forget, Naomi. You were always the true strength between us. Until someday, my love. The screen went dark. And in the silence that followed, I felt not only loss, but possibility. The house David once begged me never to visit had become my home. His secrets had become my strength. And the promise he asked me to keep had become the key to my future. I stood and walked toward the painting in the great room, studying the layers of past, present, and future I had captured on canvas. David hadn't just left me a property. He had given me the chance to rediscover myself. The house he once feared had become the house he loved. And now, it was mine, to keep transforming, one day at a time. Speech balloon. Did you enjoy this story? Round pushpin. Which city are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. If this story touched you, you can support the channel by sending a super thanks It helps me continue bringing you more meaningful life stories like this one. Thank you so much for your love and support. On your screen now, you'll see 2 more powerful life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more waiting for you on this channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next life story. With love and respect, White Heart.